Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Creature Commandos Season 1, Episode 3. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So this episode mainly revolves around G.I. Robot. And it's so interesting, I didn't think about this until this episode where I was like, oh yeah, G.I. Robot kind of gives James Gunn of it all. It's like, oh, kind of gives Groot vibes. Yes, you're talking about a talking tree that says I am Groot versus a robot that says, are there any Nazis to kill? Yes, there's a difference there, but there's like interesting parallels in that capacity. But yeah, we learned a little bit more about G.I. Robot, see him in the past with his unit, which includes Sergeant Rock. Obviously, there's been the rumors about a Sergeant Rock movie potentially being in development. I don't think anything's been official yet. I think that's just the current rumors and murmurs, but I could be mistaken. Maybe something has been like legitimately confirmed. But either way, yeah, just doing this thing and just looking for Nazis to kill. It kind of gives a little bit of that almost Captain America, but but it's a robot. I don't know. It just kind of gave me. I mean, even though G.I. Robot, there's not a direct parallel. It just kind of gave those vibes of obviously Captain America: First Avenger because it took place during World War II and stuff like that. And you were basically fighting Axis power, but a big chunk of that was the Nazis. But still, and so he's celebrating. Everyone's like, yeah, he might be a robot, but he's good good with us. And it's like, yeah, he found camaraderie and friendship. And just to see that present day when it's like, okay, Nina and the bride are still here. Oh my God, we got to get to them. And G.I. Robot, after they rescued the bride and she's just yelling at them, they're like, wait, why were you yelling at us? And she's like, I want you to take the damn tape off my mouth. But then G.I. went to go get Nina. He's like, oh, you're okay. He's like, it disappoints me that there are no Nazis here to kill, but that disappointment is lessened by knowing that you're okay, my friend. I was like, that's actually really sweet. That it's like, right, because she is the first friend he's made amongst the squad. So I thought that was actually really nice and sweet. And it turns out that I did think it's interesting that despite everything, they didn't kill the bride. They didn't kill Nina. They could have easily done that, but they didn't. Because that is the thing. They took Nina upstairs and they put her in the tub. They made sure she couldn't get out, but it's also she can't get too far away from the water. And GI is like, don't worry, I got your back, because she has an extra helmet, which they don't really show this, but I guess because she is naked, so I'm like, oh, I guess the helmet creates maybe it's nanotech where it just automatically creates a suit or something, because all she had was the helmet, and then later on she's got the suit and everything. So I was like, oh, so either you ran in there to quickly do that, which I don't think you're doing in the middle of a battle, it must just automatically create the rest of the suit. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing that they never really talk about. I guess it's just supposed to be you're supposed to infer from it. But either way, now they realize oh crap, we were taken away from the princess. This whole thing, that's why they were left alive. It was a diversion. Either way, when it's all said and done, we're learning more about G.I. Robot's past, and obviously him being brought on television. I love him being like, did you check into the people here? He's like, check them for what? Whether they're Nazis or not. He's like, there wouldn't be any Nazis here. He's like, that's exactly what a Nazi would say. And because I love when he's looking at the people with his scans and you have these question marks. So I was actually wondering, as we know, historically speaking, there were Nazis that escaped. It's not like every Nazi died. Obviously, the U.S. ended up recruiting, some of those scientists for stuff like NASA and stuff. But either way, there are Nazis that were out and about and fled to different countries and stuff. So it wouldn't be out of pocket, because at this point, I think they were saying it had been 20 years since the war, but he's kind of this, archaic, bringing out this this veteran and stuff, and he's also this robot. I think it's so interesting because basically all he knows how to do is kill Nazis. So he was obviously decommissioned, which is really sad when you think about it, because it's right, you were built for one purpose, and that was to kill Nazis. It's well, the war is over. Really no room for you, not unless they would have done a Hunters. If you've ever seen the TV show Hunters, or the premise behind that on Prime Video, it's basically about hunting Nazis that are just out and about, because that takes place in that show takes place in the late 70s. So just not unless it was a squad put together for that express purpose. But that's all he's ever known. So he gets taken by a scientist named, was it William Magnus? Now I had to look him up. He is someone from the comics. He is a scientist from the comics, but none of like because I was curious. I was like, have I ever come across this character maybe in like a live action adaptation or something? But I'm like the one thing I saw like on Wikipedia was like he was in like the Brave and the Bold animated series, but I haven't really seen that. I've seen bits and pieces years ago, but that's about it. It's one of those anime series I need to circle back to, but I don't think there's been any live action adaptations of the character that I'm aware, or I think all the versions I saw listed were like from like animated movies and stuff like that. So I'm not familiar with the character, but apparently he has ties to the Metal Man, which is a name I've heard people reference in conjunction with this show or something like that. So I only saw a picture. It seems like it's just a team of robots. It seems like it. But he also apparently has ties to the Doom Patrol in whatever capacity, I don't know. But it was interesting because because obviously I'm a big fan of the Doom Patrol because I'm a big fan of the TV show with Doom Patrol. But he definitely gave me, like, aesthetically, he did remind me of Cliff, aka Robot Man. So I was like, I wonder, was there any correlation or connection there? And maybe his robotics is what kind of eventually because I don't know if Niles Coulter is always tied to the Doom Patrol in the comics like he is in the TV show, which I think he is typically tied to them even in the comics. But he might be the team leader like he is, or person who puts them together like he is in the show. But I was wondering, like, did Niles take some of like maybe Magnus's designs and stuff like that too, because like he used GI as like the foundation for specifically like the Metal Man, but like because he has ties to the Doom Patrol, I wonder if there's any correlation there in that regard. So yeah. It once again, that sad thing where he's like, oh yeah, like Sergeant Rock and the boys. He's like, yeah, I'd love to meet up with them again and kill Nazis. It's like, yeah, they were kind of like the pseudo family. Like he had a kinship with them because, yeah, we bonded over killing Nazis, but it's like the closest thing because we were unified in our goal and stuff, and they considered me a friend and kind of family. So it's, I mean, even like the opening shot to it was like him like kind of being like, huh, and then smiling kind of. So. And then we find out like what led to him getting arrested, because he was like decommissioned and over the decades was passed around here and there. And this guy grabbed him up, and the guy, which I didn't actually check, it sounded like it was Michael Rooker. I wasn't sure, but and the guy seemed like okay, and he's taking care of GI, and he's just like, oh yeah, like he has all this, like, I guess I should have figured something at the time, but because he was like, oh, because of my leg, I couldn't sign up for the military, but he also just like all this military memorabilia. So I was like, I guess that should have been a sign to some extent. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but yeah, but he treated GI like great. They would, there was a genuine friendship, and it's like, yeah, we kind of are a family. And I think it kind of filled that void that, GI was missing of like his comrades from World War II. And then we get the reveal at the end where it's like, oh, the people here. And then I start noticing the tattoos. I was like, oh boy. And it turns out, at first I just to give the slightest thing of, I was like, could it be that this is a reenactment thing? But I'm like, why would you reenact it like all this in the guise of all of this? That's why I was like, if it was a war reenactment, sure. But I'm also like the tattoos and stuff. I was like, these are probably like legitimate neo-Nazis. And so, yeah, GI was like, oh, God, Nazis. And then proceeded to mass murder everyone in there. Everyone caught the bullets. And I love the cut back and forth between, like, right, present day, like Alana was getting attacked by Cersei and her sons of Themyscira. So she's running for her life. And eventually, like, the commando, the Task Force M shows up and starts... It comes down to GI like doing his thing, kind of like the opening in World War II, except a lot more advanced now, because like his torso separates, floats in the air, and he starts like spin to wind spraying, so. But then we cut back to like I said, between that and him killing everyone, and then he eventually gets arrested and locked up, and you're just like, oh, I mean, he did mass murder a whole bunch of people. It's that thing of like. It's yes, he killed someone, and you can't just like have him out and about. Because also the whole point of like it came up in court. I would have loved to kind of see that dissected more of like him not being considered human, which I'm like, that could set the standards for this universe going forward of just like how they handle, because like we know Matt Murdock and Jennifer Walters, She-Hulk, and Daredevil and She-Hulk respectively, lawyers in the MCU. I'm like, I'm not that familiar with any, and once again there probably is, but I'm like, I don't actually know any DC lawyers. I'm sure there are some of note, but I'm like, I can't think of any off the top of my head. Like I said, Matt and Jennifer are like the biggest standouts, but it's like, yeah, on the Marvel side of things. But either way, yeah, like him being not classified as human and stuff like that. And it's like, well, we didn't bring up well, once again, it's kind of irrelevant of, yeah, these were bad people, but they still were innocent people. They could be terrible people, but they were still innocent people to some extent, even though they probably did some like heinous shit. It's still like well, you can't be judge, jury, and executioner. But it's like, yeah, this is all he's ever known. And so it's like, right, I found Nazis and I killed Nazis. And yeah, he got locked up, and it's just, you see the passage of time. Really quickly, I'm not familiar with everyone he walked by, but the person I took notice of, I saw, was like, was it Vegetable Animal Mineral Man? Where I'm like, once again, that's a goddamn character pull. If it wasn't for said Doom Patrol TV show, I was like, isn't that him? And it's like, yeah. Like, I had to Google that to make sure I got the name right, but it's like Vegetable Animal Mineral Man. I'm like, I would have never known that if it was like, once again, that DC knowledge. Like I said, I have above average DC knowledge only because like the live action adaptations I've seen over the years. So, but like I said, if it was not for Doom Patrol, I would have never recognized that character. But yeah, just one that I happened to know. So I was like, oh, that's cool. Just kind of being like, hey, he's continuous to it. Whether we'll do anything with him, who knows? But it's like, well, at least we know he's locked up. He exists in his universe, but doesn't mean you're going to do anything with him. But yeah, just seeing the passage of time, and yeah, he was just locked away, left to rust, and collecting cobwebs and stuff. So I wonder, this is probably like the first time he's been activated in all that time, because that's also the thing. He doesn't need any mate. You just leave him in that cell because he's like, well, he's not a human that we have to feed and make sure he gets sunlight and stuff. And yeah, he doesn't get taken care of because he doesn't fall under the human rights. It's like, yeah, he's a robot. We just leave him there like the rust. He's confined, so it's kind of like, it is what it is. So it's just, once again, it's just like little things like that where you're like, oh, that's an interesting thing in the universe. Whether you utilize that in any shape or form, I don't know, but it could still be kind of an interesting precedent of just like, right, how non-humans are treated in this universe, of like, that could apply to certain characters that might, I don't know, I'm sure Superman's in that weird spot because like, well, you are an alien, like you are an alien and, not even just like the derogatory like way of like, oh, people use it, like you are a legitimate alien. So once again, I don't know how much that would get utilized in this universe, but just kind of an interesting little detail, just like I said, to think about. But yeah, and then like we kind of had that really sad scene where it's like Cersei explodes him because he's like laughing and he's killing all these people present. He's like ha 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 ha, and then gets exploded by Cersei. I was like, oh, that's actually really sad, especially to cut back and forth. And then you have Nina being the one who's the most torn up about it. She's like, GI. He's like, oh, Nina, I'm so glad I got to kill Nazis with you. Cheers for the Tinburn. I was like, oh, that's actually really sad. She's the only person. And it's actually, there's something, I don't know, like, cool is a weird way to say it, but like the fact is because she's like in a tube of like water, like a helmet of water, like obviously when you see her crying, it's just like, yeah, it's floating into the water. I don't know, just from, I was like, oh, that's just an interesting little aesthetic, but it's also like, right, she's not one person, because it's like, yeah, like the rest of the team are kind of like, but like GI's the only person she kind of was like, yeah, we had a nice interaction, you considered being a friend, and we had a nice interaction, and it's just like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I wonder, can they fix him, or is he dead? I mean, this is ostensibly a Suicide Squad, so there's no guarantee this entire squad will make it. I mean, he's a robot. He can be rebuilt, but he might start from scratch. But it might be a thing of maybe he gains even more sentience than he already did. Like, once again, it's not the exact same situation. I was about to say, like, not unless there's a robot man situation. But I'm like, once again, Cliff was a regular human whose brain was put inside a body of a robot. It's a different situation, but still. But yeah, Cersei going after Alana and trying to kill her, which I don't know if I talked about that previously, like about like the princess Alana being voiced by Maria Baklova, Borat 2, I've never seen. Well, I know she's only in Borat 2, but I've never seen Borat 1 or 2. But obviously, I know her James Gunn wise for voicing Cosmo in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. But also, Cersei's voiced by, what's the actress's name? It's Anya Chalotra. I'm probably like butchering her last name. I'm so sorry. Yennefer from the Witcher TV show, if you've ever seen it. So I was like, oh, because regardless, I was like, yeah, I think I kept forgetting to bring that up. But yeah, like she's all about killing the princess, and then like fucking Weasel coming in for the savior, like, hey, yo, Weasel, MVP? And he kind of starts ripping into Cersei. She's like, oh, that's kind of brutal. It's like, well, might not be too much of a stretch for him to have murdered those 27 kids, because we keep referencing it in the Suicide Squad and this. But then also Phosphorus like coming over and like burning her face. I was like, oh, that's crazy. And even I love the bride bringing it back, because I think earlier in the episode, Rick Flag was like, oh, I thought I was getting a team of monsters or whatever, because it's just like, how could you fall into this situation to kind of get your asses handed to you type of thing, and like, you know, like you kind of going off on your own and stuff. But then like she's like, oh, you said you wanted a team of monsters, there you are. And he saw what they did, but they didn't kill Cersei, they just like, you know, jacked her up. But then she's like, you have no idea what you've just done, you've kind of doomed the world. So I was like, okay, so are we dealing with what I thought? Because I kept being like, I think the princess isn't a good person. Now, whether she'll be like the main antagonist, because it seems like Cersei is not the main antagonist of this show. It's probably a thing of, hey, I utilize these terrible people, the sons of Themyscira. I'm utilizing them to do something. It's like, you got to work with bad to get rid of the greater evil type of thing. I don't know. We'll have to wait to see how this all plays out and where this ultimately ends up going. But that's what she's like, oh, you have no idea what's going on. Like, because that was the thing I was so confused about. I was like, why are you going, like, I wasn't fully sure, like, I still not fully clear on, like, what her goal is, like, why she's attacking this country. I know why the U.S. is involved, because it's like, well, you're an ally, and plus they have minerals there that we could utilize, because they don't know how to really use it. I mean, but you're allies. That comes first and foremost, even though, you know, once again, U.S. has always got its ulterior motive, specifically Waller. But Waller always looks out for the U.S.'s, like, personal interest. So it's always in tandem. It's always one hand shaking the other type of situation when it comes to the U.S. and Waller. But either way, so that's what we understand. But like the Cersei side of things, maybe we'll get more context next episode. Kind of a slight spoiler if you don't know. Like apparently the next episode is like the Weasel episode is what people have talked about. So I'm interested to see what that what that ends up being. Apparently, like, I think people have said, like, James Gunn's been quoted as, like, 4 and 7 are his favorite episodes. And I've heard people who got screeners or, you know, seen later in the season have said they really liked 4. So I'm curious to see what it is. Like, what about Weasel are we going to find out and stuff, and where this ends up going? Once again, figuring stuff out. Like a GI robot. Like, is there any running that back? Or is he dead forever? And if he does come back, in what capacity? But also just where all this ends up taking us. You know, whether the princess is you know, maybe as bad as I thought she might be initially, because I was like, I think that's why she's getting close. She's going so hard in the paint trying to hook up with Rick Flag Sr. is because she needs someone on her side. So it probably makes it a little easier to kind of, you know, manipulate the, you know, friends close, enemies closer type of thing. We'll see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.